And we are live for another episode of the Blue Crocus Experience. Guys, I'm excited about this one. I say it on every show. I'm excited about the guests that we have on. I don't chat with people that are going to waste your time or mine. But I'm really excited about this one because this is a return episode, a recurring theme here with Keith Callaway Sr. I interviewed him. We were just chatting. I think I didn't check before we jumped on, but I think it was almost 2 years ago that we chatted.
Yeah.
I was a lot different person then, and I know you guys have had some big growth. So, Keith, welcome to the show. Excited to have you back. Really excited to just chat here today.
Yeah, glad to be here. I love this.
Awesome. So, we were saying too, we could talk for days about all kinds of things, but we are probably going to focus on the culture stuff that you guys have been building because you said that's something that stuck out to you. Anybody who's been watching K&L has seen the culture develop, has seen just what you put out on social media is just a fraction, I'm sure, of what's actually happening behind the scenes. And this is something that we touched on the first time we chatted. So I guess I'll back up a little bit too and say, Keith runs a paving company in Portland, Oregon. And they travel around and absolutely crush it out there. But you guys have also focused a lot on people, your customers and your clients. So if you want to just give people a quick background, without diving into all the backstory that we talked about the first time. So if you guys want to, know a little bit more about the history of Keith and the company, jump onto the first episode with him. But Keith, just for those who are new here, give us a quick synopsis of what you do, where you are, and then we'll dive into some of the culture stuff.
Well, we own, like Lewis said, we run and own and run a paving company near Portland, Oregon. And we've gone from, I think I looked at the numbers the other day, we've probably multiplied in the last 6.5 years, 17 times. And, that sounds great. I mean, man, that's what you live for, right? It's like, I want to build this thing. I want to grow it. That's going to be fantastic. But let me tell you, that has caused a lot of problems and revealed a lot of problems. One of the problems that revealed really fast was that we needed to live outside of ourselves with our values and understand very clearly what we're about so that we can be comfortable in our own business. We can't have other people hijacking who we are. And that's one of the things that we, a few years ago, were very clear about, is that we're going to operate this way. And here's the reason behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we call culture around here. And so that's the synopsis. We have goals of doubling yet again, and within almost doubling within about 3 years more. So because of the cultural piece, we feel like there's some confidence behind that goal because we bring good people in. Many of them are coming to us, and we can get into that in a moment. But that gives us the energy to say that if we doubled again within 3 years, that we're not going to get basically mowed over by it.
Yeah.
Like it's not gonna kill us to do it.
Yeah. Because a lot of people, they look at revenue and they're like, "That's incredible." I'm going to double, and sometimes that snuffs out the candle. Because there are a lot of problems with scaling. I mean, I've seen that just since we've chatted. I think it was just me when we chatted, and now there's 4 or 5 people on the team, and it's brought out a lot of stuff in me. It's brought out a lot of stuff, in the way we operated. And so I'm excited to get into that. But I'm just going to touch on, got a few people watching. Kyle is here. Christopher, Dan's in Vancouver, Washington. So he's right beside you guys there.
Oh, good. Love to meet
him. Appreciate everyone who's showing up. And if you guys have questions too, as you're listening here and as we're talking, drop them in the comments and we'll try and address them as we go through. But yeah, Keith, you mentioned the scaling stuff, and I think that a lot of people who are growing a company are going to feel the pain and the growth. And you can address it as an awesome thing, or you can address it as something that sucks and you want to get out of business. But I want to go back to, you said you got clear on where you're going. And I think that we can see that. We can see that you guys are, from my perspective, you're super people oriented, and very much, looking to better people's lives. So talk a little bit about that, and help people who are listening understand what that looks like from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, some of our backstory is, I won't go way back, but 6.5 years ago, Keith Jr., who is my business partner, I think most of the guys on this call right now will know who he is, because he's on social media and putting stuff out there. He's probably more well known than I am in most circles, actually. But he got clean and sober 6.5 years ago. That's a whole nother story, probably for a whole hour of podcast or something, probably more than that. But what that meant for us is that because he's a pretty good recruiter, what was he recruiting? He was recruiting that are all people that are also in recovery of some kind, alcohol, drugs. They might not have that issue, but they were out of prison. And, he might have met them there or knew somebody that knew them. And so the kind of folks that we started bringing in 6.5 years ago were the kind that the rest of society doesn't really want. And our industry attracts those anyway, to some degree. The outside, the doing the work outside, the kind of the grimy jobs, the dirty jobs, so to speak.
Yeah.
Our industry, and in construction in general, attracts that kind of people, but paving is one of those that's an awful lot that way. And so we decided at that point that, without even knowing it, we had made a cultural decision that when we bring these people in, many of them have been in prison or in drugs since their teen years, and they literally don't have what it takes to do life. They don't know how to budget. They have no idea what to do with a paycheck when they get it. And 6.5 years later, I would say we have a very long list now of ways that we've helped people understand what it takes to do the real life.
Cool.
And along with that, some of that is a little bit of spiritual counsel, a little bit of counsel on discipline. Like, if you want to have a good life, you literally can't go drinking every weekend. This is not what, and so you have to live a certain way. One of our core values is being purposeful, and the way we kind of put that out in front of our people consistently, constantly, is that the way you do one thing is actually the way you do everything. Yeah, there's some gaps in that as a theory, as a philosophy, but it's true. If you leave trash all over your personal car, you're not gonna treat our company vehicles very well, or vice versa. And that'll dovetail eventually into your relationships. You're gonna leave a mess there too. And so we're always talking about being a consistent, a steady person. Decide what you want to be and be steady. And if you need help figuring it out, number one, and then implementing it, number two, we're all about that. So we will help you.
That's huge. That's huge. So you've basically, would you say more focus is put on the personal development side of your employees to grow them as people and as, functioning members of your team, or is it on training the skills? Because I think that, there's skills side, and then there's, the side of growing people. And a lot of people focus just on the skills side. And then they're like, well, there's a lot of stuff that bleeds through because of that, that philosophy that you just mentioned of one way, the way you do one thing is the way that you're going to pretty well do everything. So when it comes to, I know you shared some stories on our first call about, some of the things that you did to help people. I don't know if there's a couple anecdotes that you might be able to share on ways that you guys come together and help people grow as people while also being, their employer.
Well, I will. Yes, I do. So the answer to the question you asked originally in this, a few sentences ago, is it about skills, or is it about life, and and how you're going to live your life? And of course, the answer is it's about how you're going to live your life. Because if you have traction, if you get traction, if you have a better life, you're going to be happier when you come to work. You're happier when you come to work. You're going to produce more for us. So it's circular. Right. And so we understand that. If you treat the people well, they treat you well. With more respect, they produce more. All those things they're just true. but we really spend a lot of time on a couple of things in particular, tools that we use, and I can probably give some of those, and people that watch, they might like those. We plagiarized. It's not it's plagiarism probably, because Brian over at Top Contractors School gives us a form that we can use freely called How You Want to Be Coached. And that is an insight into the person. It's actually fairly easy to fill out for most people.
Mm-hmm.
It does tend to create a little bit of an expectation that what they say there is going to be
how they're treated.
Yeah. And so you have to be careful how you do it. You do have to have a check-in. You can't just have them write it down and nothing happens with it. And so you have to be careful how you use it. But so that's one tool that we had our team do that this year. My goal as kind of the founder around here, the old guy, is to check back in. That's my goal for second quarter, is to check back in on that particular form and what was written there and why.
Yeah.
And it's really more about them being heard than it is about us changing what we do to manage what's on that piece of paper. They just want to be heard and know that they're seen.
Yeah.
And then another tool we use is the smarter method of going through a goal setting. And anybody who doesn't know the smarter method, you can go online and find it. So it's not rocket science. It just is a tool that we sit down. I have a goal setting time with every one of our employees every year.
Wow.
And we talk.
And that would be like personal goals, right?
It would be a personal goal, and I get a personal goal from them, and then I ask them to talk to me about a work goal, and what they want to do in their career in some cases, and many times they're related. I just talked to one of our younger guys yesterday, and his goal, he's new, so I just kind of went through the form for him, and his personal goal was to buy a new truck, and he thinks he can do that this year. He wants to buy a new truck, but his goal on the job, in his job, is to go from raking, which is what we have him doing, to understanding how to run the paver. He already had it figured out that that's going to create more value for him and probably get him a raise. So he already knew that. And I said, well, which one do you think is more relevant to your life this year? And he said, well, if I want the truck, I probably need more money. So let's talk about this other one. And I usually let them help me make that decision, which is going to have the biggest relevance to your life. And then I make sure that the goal is very specific, that we can break it into pieces. And we spend, typically it's close to an hour. And you can imagine that it goes some funny places sometimes. It goes to some places that are a little deeper, a little more painful. I've seen a lot of tears. I've seen a little bit of anger. I've seen a lot of frustration about getting traction in certain areas of someone's life. But the best part is that they are being seen. They are being heard in that moment. And so that's a really good tool we use. I do it. As part of that tool, probably the most important piece to me is, first of all, listening, but then the second important piece is that I write down their midpoint. What do you think your midpoint is for accomplishing that goal, so that I can check back in, see if you're on track, see if there's any way I can help you, or just encourage you to keep going the way you're going. And we set a date that I check back in with them, and I put those in my calendar, and sometime during that week, I'll go to a job site, or I'll pull them into the office, or somehow just say, this is what you said. How are you doing on that? And often it comes up just organically before I even get to that date.
Mm-hmm.
But
they'll be like, hey, I reached my goal, or
or I'm you're going to be talking to me in a month anyway, but I want you to know I feel like I'm halfway there now. And I'm like, man, that's great. And sometimes by the time you get the best part, another good part of it is that sometimes they'll set a goal, sitting down there with me, and they'll realize within a month or two that it actually isn't really the one they want. And then they have some of the equipment, the tools it takes to change it for themselves and say, actually, I'm changing it to this. And it isn't always bigger. Sometimes it's a little, call it smaller, so that it's realistic and attainable. For instance, a guy wanted to rent a bigger house. He's got a big family, you know, and whatever. And he realized that if he spends 1 year this year in the house that they're in with the cheaper rent, he can actually probably buy a house perhaps next year. So he changed his own goal because he saw it differently.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And this is, I think it's funny you brought up the how you want to be employed, because I literally learned about that last night on Kyle and Cam Roberts podcast. They were
So
doing,
how you want to be coached?
yeah, how you want to be coached.
Yeah.
And they had shared that Cam Roberts had shared the format, and so it's really interesting that I'm hearing it again. So there's something to be said for that. But that's really powerful, and I think if you want to send that over, what you guys use, I'll even include it in the show notes if that's something that is of interest to you, to share with people. But there's what I was thinking is, as they were talking last night, and as you were bringing that up again today, is a lot of us just go through life. A lot of people as employees, a lot of people as business owners, we just go through life, right? And so having someone, like in your case, have them even think about what their goals are and then touch in on those goals, that's huge. People pay big money to have people that do that. To have someone that's doing that, and you're providing that service for the employees. That's amazing.
Well, what we've discovered is that there's certain things we'll put money and time into. Everybody does. They prioritize their dollars and their time. Those things are both finite. And what we have realized through trial and error is that if we put time into the people, then the people put time into us and into what we're growing here. And they're not opposed. And then it gives them a level of trust that when they have something to say, then of course we're working on that. We're always working on that and make sure they have a place to come back and say, hey, I'd like to make some suggestions, or so-and-so's being fill in the blank, right? And some of those things aren't always positive, but then we can go back to some of the goal setting and how do you want to be coached things and say, okay, well, how does it relate to your part of this?
That's amazing.
If you understood them better, how would this change? How would this situation change? And then how could you lead that situation to resolution and not have to involve the rest of us in it?
Yeah.
And of course, we want that growth in the people as much as we want them to get a bigger house or all those other things.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for you taking the time to chat with each person. Like, you guys have, how big is your crew right now?
Well, we did a company retreat in North Carolina in conjunction with the National Pavement Expo. And the retreat was about 2.5 days. We had a couple other companies join us there, which is a completely different model. We can get into that another time too. It was super fun. It revealed some things and helped us learn also. But we took 27 people across the country. There was 4 people on our team that either had just joined or couldn't come because of health issues or something. So 4 people were here. Since then, we've onboarded 2 more, and we have, I think, 4 more coming in the next month because we're kind of gearing up for the season. So we'll be at 36 or 37 within the next couple of months.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So this is how you treat the people that are there, and how does that translate into your hiring? Because you said you just hired a couple new people. What does that look like? Are you guys desperately canvassing on the spot for people? I see people, they need someone now, and so they're desperate. They throw it up on Indeed, they post on Facebook and get their friends and family that usually don't end up working well. Talk a little bit about that process for you guys.
Okay, so some of it's a long burn. Some of it you can't fix tomorrow. But I will say that if you post anything, even if it's just live videos on Facebook and Instagram, and people are seeing those, especially people in your industry, then once they find out that you're hiring, there's a level of trust there. They feel like they know something about you. And whether it's how we do things, the production, how we look, the fact that our trucks all match, they know little details, And yet in their mind, in your and my mind, it takes us to the next level. Like we're starting to trust.
Yeah.
So a couple of stories real fast on just recruiting. Last year, my crew kind of bumped into another crew. I mean, they were on the same street and doing a little bit different type of work, but they were on the same street. And that crew leader came over and talked to Keith Jr. and they met each other, and nothing really happened from it. So this year we decided we wanted to hire a couple of mid-level management. So we actually hired a recruiter to help us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that guy was contacted by the recruiter, and because he knew of us and had seen us on social media and met Keith Jr., he applied, and he's now on our team, and he's one of our greatest assets.
That's amazing.
That all happened within the last couple of months. Matter of fact, his first day here was when we got in the van at 3 a.m. to go to the airport to go to that retreat. That was his first day working for us. So he felt invested in the moment he started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for him, if I understand it right, he assumed this would be the case because he already knew.
Because he saw it. He saw it bleeding through.
He saw it already. So for him, once the job offer came, we worked out the dollars and cents part of it. Then it was a lot easier for him to make the decision to move over here. So we have hired recruiters, and we've got some help from them. But in every case, they already knew of us. At least the local guy.
The marketing, if you will, had started, long ago, right?
The almost 3 years now of videos, and then the posts that we do live out in the field and these kinds of things. All of that really matters.
Yeah.
And you don't have
it matters to your clients, your potential clients and customers, but also, and this is something I hear from people, more and more, is how you show up to your clients is how you show up to potential employees. So, make the same message for everyone, and it's incredible what can happen. And I think that's a testament. I mean, if you guys haven't followed, I'll put links in the show when this goes live as a podcast, but check out their K&L's Facebook, check out their website. There's stories, there's interviews with employees. And so we get to see, a smidgen of the behind the scenes. And you guys bleed red at K&L. You make it happen. And there's, in our first podcast, we talked about some stuff where you've had to interact with employees and you've had to help them toe the line, and some of them left the crew because they just didn't align, and some of them became even stronger. I think one of the guys we chatted about in the first one, he left and then came back because he's like, I need to be part of this family again.
Yeah. We had one guy here that's actually really good for our culture. Once he figured his life out a little bit.
Yeah.
He's actually back on his fourth chance, which typically we don't go that deep with him. But that one, it worked, and it was right what he did. Mm-hmm. He needed to separate for a while, get his brain together.
Yeah.
So in regards to hiring crew people, our crew. So the best one of the stories I love to tell is I had one of my crew come up to me in the middle of summer last year, and we were needing a couple more people because we were just, we were really cranking, and we just needed more fresh people to energize the group, right? And so we made an announcement, we needed it. So he walked up to me and he said, I got a cousin that needs a job. And then I didn't say anything. He looks at me, turns, looks me straight in the eyes, and he says, he waited about 5 seconds, and he said, "Never mind," and walked away. Well, it's a funny story because he did that, but what was he doing in his own mind? He was trying to picture his cousin on one of our job sites. Yeah. And did that guy fit? Is he going to be a hard worker? Is he really going to be an asset, or is he going to drag us down? And he was picturing that in his mind for about 5 seconds. And then he realized that his cousin would not be a good fit. And the conversation ended at that point. And I thought that was probably my hallmark moment of recruiting, because the wrong guy didn't come in.
And saved everyone a load of headache.
Saved everyone a headache. And him having to fire his own cousin,
Yeah.
essentially is the way it would have gone. Probably is like, no, he's not a fit. He would
That's
have been the first to know it.
that's
So,
huge.
so when we tell our guys, yeah, we're looking for people, they already know what we mean. What kind of people are we looking for? Do they share our core values? I've told you one of our core values on this podcast. We have 4 others, and we talk about them all the time. They're up in front of them. They're on posters. I give a core value spotlight in all of our meetings, not in every meeting I attend. I give, whether it's a sales meeting, a production meeting, I give a core value spotlight. Like, let's think of it this way, guys. And I make sure that it's in front of everybody all the time.
Wow. So what do you do, shifting a little bit from the culture, because Keith as a person, there's a lot going on in you to lead the charge. Keith Jr. as well. I see both of you putting a lot of work into developing yourselves. The faith aspect of this is huge for you guys. How does that all come together? Does your how are you pouring into yourself to then pour into the crew? Because that's something that speaks to me as a leader. And I'm watching you guys, and I'm watching how you do it, and so I'd love for you to share a few nuggets from that.
Yeah. Well, personal development to me is there's 2 prongs to it. I've met a lot of people that kind of got into it, and though they became more disciplined, they became a lot harder to be around. And so I kind of take it a little slower in regards to personal development. I want to know my why behind it every time. Yeah. Like, why am I thinking about this particular thing? Like, I would hear a talk by Les Brown or Ed Milet or something, and there's a lot of energy behind it. And so I'll consider what I'm hearing, and I'll say, how does that fit into my life? Mm-hmm. And I filter that through my faith, through the fact that these values didn't come out of a vacuum. They didn't come off a piece of paper. They came because I actually already lived them. Mm-hmm. And when it came to the morals and ethics of how I'm going to run my business, those were developed in some cases decades ago. And I'm still working on them because the world is different. And so where are we going to land on certain things? Still working on that. But in regards to personal development, it's super important. We've got to have input. I listened while I was taking a run this morning. I listened to a book on sales. I don't do sales in my company, and yet I'm one of my company's greatest evangelists. So basically, I do sales.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also thought, man, this book would be really good for this sales team, for mine, because there's some really good stuff here. Now they're going to have to throw some things out. Also, I work with another sales team at another company, and I'm like, okay, there's at least some pieces in this that they could use too.
Yeah.
Personal development is probably not really the right word, because it's personal, yes, but if it's not affecting others, then it's actually kind of pointless.
I love that. That's so good.
Yeah. So, my wife is always talking about those personal development people. They coming out and they say all these things, and some of the people that are the most adamant about personal development literally come off like they're the biggest jerk in the world. Mm-hmm. And we've actually met some of these people at a couple of the conferences we've been to, and we're like, yeah, that person is not pleasant to be around. And yet they're some of one of the most highly disciplined persons that we know, we think, at least that's what they show on social media.
Yeah.
Well, then what was the point behind it? If you're not gaining, like, I know you being a father is very important to you, Lewis.
Yeah.
And of course it should be. But if being a good father is personal to you and it's not helping your kids, then what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a social media father? Is it someone who's actually there?
Yeah.
And that's something I'm growing in and learning. Yeah. That's I love that line. That's it's still resonating with me. Personal development, if it doesn't affect other people, it's useless, and I might even add selfish, and a waste of time. Because that's That's a nugget right there that I'm going to take away for sure.
Yeah. So because I am into put it in quotes, into personal development, I go slow.
Hmm.
I learned years ago when all my kids were little. My wife and I went to a marriage conference. No, it was a parenting conference in this case, and we took away a few things, but most of the concepts that were shared there, we really didn't agree. Now, part of it was is that the average number of kids in the home back then was 2.5 or 3 or whatever the average number was. We had 7,
Yeah.
so automatically our culture in our house is going to look different, right? And so we have to throw some things out that works for somebody with 2 or 3 kids. It's not going to work for us.
Yeah.
So that was obvious up front, but we were thankful we went because we did gain something. And that taught me some things about when I dig in on something or when I volunteer to go get taught, look for the things I can use because probably there's many things in there that I won't use
Yeah.
or I'm not ready to use. And if I try to do something that's a high discipline thing and I'm not ready, then I'm going to fail and it's going to probably affect people around me also negatively.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's huge. And I know, you had the 7 kids, but you always had like 20 other kids living with you guys too, right?
Yeah. Matter of fact, we have somebody living with us currently.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Um, to kind of, I'm loving this chat here, and I wish we had longer, but I know that I watched a video of you guys, and I don't remember which conference it was at, but you received an award. I believe Brian was giving you the award. And I don't know if it was the TCS conference or not, but your wife came up. You spoke really, really sweetly about her, and then she talked a little bit. But as I've watched you guys and gotten to know you guys a little bit over the last couple of years, she's an integral part in the business and the culture and everything. And how does that play out? And how can someone get someone like your wife, not as a partner necessarily, but like she seems like she's the unsung hero in the background. Would you agree?
well, that's an easy way to say it, but what I alluded to in that conversation about her is that she's not in the background. She isn't out on the job sites, but when the guys come in the office to pick up their paychecks or deliver their paperwork for the week or whatever, she is she sees them,
Hmm.
and that doesn't mean that every week there's a deep conversation. But when one of them is struggling and she's got a good sense for what's going, that something's off a little bit. And I've always called her the mother of the world. Like mothers have instincts. And, and since we're like family around here, she feels like their mother and she wants to make sure they're okay. And
Yeah.
those conversations sometimes go real deep, real
Wow.
fast. She doesn't go slow when it comes to that. She knows that time is limited. We all have lives to go to, so she'll often pull them off to the side or just have a conversation. Literally, we're pretty open around here, so if we're gonna have a conversation, we can have it in front of others. That's fine, unless it goes a certain particular direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she is not just integral. She's basically, I don't know. I don't know what we would do without her, honestly.
I know. I could see the emotion on your face there, and that it affected me as a listener. I hope that other people see this. And man, this is I'm looking at the time here, and I do have to run, so it's a bit of a shame. I think we're gonna have to do a repeat here in about a month, once
Yeah.
once the baby comes, because we haven't chatted often enough.
No,
I
I know.
think is what this drives home for me is, even if it's not on there, we've got to connect, because I appreciate the insights you bring. I appreciate watching you guys grow, and I see the lives that are being impacted in the industry. You're raising the bar in the industry. You're raising the bar for me, of what it means to be a parent. Um, and you're raising the bar with customer service and employees and all of that. And so I've really enjoyed this, Keith. I always enjoy our chats tremendously. What's the best way for people to find you? And maybe touch on the fact you said you were mentoring another team there as well. What is the things that you have on the go now that people can connect with you and potentially even have you pour into their company?
Well, it's gonna probably sound weird to some people, this coming out of my mouth, because I'm all about the culture and about the relationships. But it's hard to have good relationships if you don't have good processes and systems and good expectations. It's so hard. It just makes everything harder, and then the relationships suffer for it.
Yeah.
So I would encourage business owners to get some help in that area if you're not, kind of leaning that direction.
Yeah.
Mentally, get some help, get some processes that, and they can be core processes. They don't have to dial in on every single thing, but that's going to matter a lot. And one of the things we're doing now that we're growing is I'm looking for more people to help me with that culture side.
Hmm.
Like, who am I going to pass certain things to? Because at some point I'm not going to have the capacity. So, so always be looking forward. One of the things I write in my planner every day is one of the things I just write down is have a 10-year, keep looking at my 10-year plan.
Wow.
I'm almost 59 years old and I need a 10-year plan really bad.
Hmm.
You know, otherwise I could just spin off into things that aren't really important.
Yeah.
My time is limited. Well, everybody's is, but my time is limited. So I need to make sure I'm using it the best I can. So I need to mentor, I need to put other people in place in the things that are important, and I need to do my thing really well as
Hmm.
I'm moving, as I'm moving along, and I make sure I have goals like I'm asking everybody else to have.
I love that. I love that. It comes back to, we're gonna have to come up with a different word because now you've kind of changed my perspective on personal development, I think, or shifted it to something that I already knew and just put your finger on it. But personal development is what we're gonna have to use for now. Pouring into yourself, taking yourself, a mile down the road so that you can then lead others and do that. So Keith, this has been amazing. This has been fantastic to catch up. We're gonna leave people with that. I'll catch up with you quickly off air, but appreciate you coming on and appreciate you sharing some with
Happy
us.
to do it. We'll do it again.
Awesome.